Hey there everybody, Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Top 10 Songs. Today we're going to continue our look at some of the best bands out of Canada for all of our viewers up there in the Great White North. So today we're going to talk about the very cool prog act Saga. A very unique band. A band that I've liked for quite a long time. A band that has a ridiculously long catalog and discography, which made putting this together in a way a lot easier. I'll tell you why. That's normally not the case. So for most of you who are fans, you know obviously they had a ridiculously strong run of albums from, God, when did that, I think that first album came out in 79, if I'm not mistaken, 78 or 79, up and through like the mid-80s. Their first like 4 or 5 albums, really, really strong. And I think a lot of us who are fans of the band know that part of the catalog really, really well. They have since released, God, how many? I don't even know how many albums they're up to. There's so many of them. I own the entire catalog, and it's crazy how many albums they have. And while there's tons of really good material throughout their catalog, for me, a lot of my favorite songs come from those first like 4 or 5 albums. So that's what you're going to see mostly in my top 10. I didn't do what I normally do, which is go through every single album and pull out honorable mentions. There's just too many albums, and we could spend an hour doing this show. So what I did was I have a very strong top 10, which are my favorites, and then a bunch of honorable mentions kind of sprinkled from throughout their catalog. I didn't touch on a lot of the more recent ones because I don't know those albums as well. But there's some really good stuff on there. Obviously, they're all pretty strong, but I always tend to go back to those, the early part of their career, which I like quite a bit. So let's get started. So my number 10, this was a late addition to my number 10. I actually had a song that's more recent as my number 10, and it got kind of booted out the last minute because I was listening to this particular song, and I was like, damn, how can... There's no way this cannot be in my top 10. I'm talking about from the very first album, The Perfectionist. Just a really, really cool prog tune. And again, these guys were not your prototypical prog band like 70s style prog. They really used a lot of, at the time, very modern synthesizer sounds. Some of the rhythms were a lot more contemporary, like early 80s soundish. And Ian Crichton's guitar work, extremely metallic, almost bordering on metal at times, and he was a blazing lead player as well. So The Perfectionist kind of like had all, and Michael Sadler's vocals and vocal melodies just off the charts, and he was very different, very unique voice. So The Perfectionist kind of like added a lot of those elements that really became the Saga sound. That's for their first album. My number 9, also from the debut, Humble Stance, a real kind of quirky, groovy little rocker, kind of different, right? Not stereotypical of the Saga sound, but I love the playful kind of vocals in that. The chorus is just awesome, and that's been like kind of like a favorite of a lot of fans all throughout the years. Next up, number 8, from the Heads or Tails album. Okay, we're talking mid-80s here now. Catwalk, right? A good example of how they incorporated really catchy pop hooks in the midst of these kind of proggy, kind of metallic tunes. So Catwalk I always like quite a bit. Coming in at number 7, from Silent Night. And I got to mention the album covers on these early albums. It's off the charts. Coming in at number 7 from Silent Night, Don't Be Late. A memorable anthem from the band. And just the incredible synth work in that tune, and the dun 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 dun, the riffs and the bass work, and it's just a really, really kind of haunting building tune. I really like it a lot. Next up, from Images at Twilight, a kick-ass album, Mouse in a Maze. That's just like a great upbeat, just kind of vibrant prog rocker. And again, if you've heard any of the live versions of that, killer, killer, killer. All right, number 5, from Heads or Tails again, The Flyer. Another real memorable, hook-laden, up-tempo rock tune. Okay, with those prog embellishments. And I love the chorus. I'm the flyer, one desire. It's just awesome. This is such a catchy tune. Coming in at number 5. Coming in at number 4, obviously their best known tune. It's a great one. It's not my favorite from them, but it's ranks up there quite high. It's their most famous tune for a reason, because it's just incredibly hooky. It's pretty rock, and it's got some insane like instrumental shit going on in it. On the Loose from the Worlds Apart album. Their biggest single, their biggest album, okay, for a reason. Number 3, okay, my top 3 I really dig quite a bit. Number 3, once again from the Images of Twilight album, You're Not Alone. Love it. Just love it. Another real memorable anthem from the band. Yeah. Can't say much more about that. It's just such a fantastic song. Number 2, Back to the Worlds Apart album. Wind Him Up. Dun, 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 dun. In my opinion, that should have been the enormous hit from that album. In fact, a lot of these songs on this list should have been hits. Seriously, you know, the band had a nice following in Canada, did little to nothing here in the U.S., you know, other than the Worlds Apart album and On the Loose. They've been huge in Germany for decades. So there's something, the Germans know something that we don't, obviously. And, you know, the sad thing is, you know, I went to see these guys live. I only saw them live once. This had to have been 10, 11 years ago. I'm not really sure exactly what year it was. It was probably like, you know, 2000, 6, 7, 8, 9, something like that. I don't really remember. I saw them in New York City. It was their big triumphant return to New York. They hadn't played there in a long, long time. They played at BB King's in Times Square. And like it was like a Friday night show or something like that, and like 50 people showed up. It was like in the middle of the summer. It was swelteringly hot outside, and there was only like 50 people there. And I remember I was hanging out with the band backstage, and they were like really disappointed in the ticket sales and all that. And it's just like, you know, but the band never were big here at all. So I just really, I don't, you know, yeah, we all wanted more people there, and I know the band did, but I just, you know, the expectations, I think, were a lot greater than it actually was. They were thinking a triumphant return to New York, and didn't quite happen. And I know they're looking to do possibly a kind of an East Coast farewell tour sort of thing, you know, coming up. I hope they do well. Anyway, that was my number 2, Wind Him Up. Coming in at number 1, Back to the Silent Night album. A really cool tune, and I think one of their unsung songs in their entire discography. Careful Where You Step. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Ian's guitar work on that is just absolutely incredible. And I love the pacing of that song. So some really strong stuff. So let's zip through some honorable mentions. Again, I don't have a ton because it's just so much material. I don't want to spend all day doing this. But from the first album, how about How Long? Climbing the Ladder. Will It Be You? Ice Nice. That's a song that's right on the periphery of my top 10. Tired World. From Images of Twilight, Take It or Leave It. It's Time. Hot to Cold. From Silent Night. How about Compromise? That's a really good one. Help Me Out. From Worlds Apart, Time's Up. Another really great tune from that album. Conversations and No Stranger. Interestingly enough, Worlds Apart is their biggest selling album ever. But I think the couple that come before it and the one that comes after it, well, that's debatable. The couple that are before, I think, are actually stronger. There's some kind of mellow stuff on Worlds Apart, other than like the couple really standout tracks. So whether it deserves to be their biggest seller, I don't know. It just worked out that way. I think On the Loose kind of helped that out. But I do like the Worlds Apart album quite a bit. I just like others better. But anyway, from where we leave off, from Security of Illusion, how about Mind Over Matter? That's another song that was in my original top 10 and it got booted out. And Stand Up I like quite a bit. And again, I've left off a ton of stuff here, but from the 2020 album, which is one of their more recent ones, I really love, and this was my number 10 actually in my original list, and it got booted for The Perfectionist, Anywhere You Want to Go. I think is a ridiculously catchy, metallic prog rocker. Love it. A lot of stuff. I really like the 2020 album quite a bit. But they've got so many albums. I mean, literally, my honorable mentions could have been like 100 songs. And I just was like, you know what, I'm just not going to do that today. So I urge any of you who haven't listened to Saga, start with the early albums. You know, those first 4 or 5 are dynamite. They had a whole bunch of the rest of the 80s and early 90s. Some of them are hit or miss as far as quality. I found a lot of these Saga albums around that time period have a lot of good material, but they're not like as solid top to bottom as the early ones. Although I find the more recent ones are very, very strong. If you're into concept albums, check out Generation 13. And they also they put out a live album that puts together all of oh Jesus, I'm drawing a complete blank. All the phase tunes, all the the concept tunes. Throughout all their albums, they sprinkled like these songs that had to do with an overall concept. Which what they did live is they put all those tunes together and played them in the order that the lyrics kind of really cool idea that to do that whole concept thing, I think, and it was really ingenious to kind of sprinkle those songs all throughout their catalog instead of doing just like one concept album. So pretty cool, right? So anyway, that's my top 10 for Saga. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on the mighty YouTube. To continue on, so we've done a bunch of Canadian bands. So we did April Wine, Max Webster, Saga. We did Rush, I don't know, a month or so ago. A couple of you have asked for a BTO top 10 songs. So that's going to be coming up fairly soon. Probably not in the next couple days, maybe next week sometime. But we got a bunch of stuff coming up this weekend. Hopefully questions and answers. Gary Moore top 10 songs. Thin Lizzy best to worst albums. Hopefully a Dio top 10 songs as well. I got some new product stuff coming up, so we're going to try and squeeze as much as we can. So we'll see you real soon. Check out the website. We got reviews of all sorts of stuff on there. If you haven't, www.seatranquility.org, and invite your friends here on YouTube. Get yourself comfortable, watch some videos. We got tons of content on here. God, I forget how many hundreds of videos we have on here. Go to our playlist section and just start looking at all the back stuff. If you're someone who's joined us over the last couple of months, we got so much content going back, 4.5 years. So check it all out, and we'll see you again real soon.